Hi everyone! Today let's have an in-depth Bible study about Matthew chapter 4 verses 23 to 25. These are just very few verses, but there's a lot that we can learn from here. And this passage talks about the early ministry of Jesus, about him healing the sick people and the demon-possessed. So let me read the word for you. Jesus went throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness among the people. News about him spread all over Syria, and people brought to him all who were ill with various diseases, those suffering severe pain, the demon-possessed, those having seizures and paralyzed, and he healed them. Large crowds from Galilee, the Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judea, and the region across the Jordan followed him. Now, since we don't have the space anymore, I have here a little note where we can write down everything that we can learn from these few verses. Now, for us to understand the passage we just have read, we have to understand its context as well, and we would be able to understand it by answering the 5 W questions: what, who, when, where, and why. And let's start with the what question. So what is the passage all about? So this passage highlights the beginning of Jesus' ministry. It emphasizes his role as a teacher, preacher, and healer, and the impact he had on the people who followed him. Let's answer the question who, and let's start with who's the writer of this passage. Of course, it's Matthew, one of the disciples of Jesus and one of his witnesses during his ministry. Who are the people involved in this passage? Of course, we have Jesus, our teacher, preacher, and healer, and the Messiah that people are waiting for how many years? Who else are involved? We have the people that are sick and suffering from demon possession. And of course, we have the crowds, the large groups of people from different places that we have mentioned earlier. Now, where did this happen? So we would be able to see from the first verse that it happened in Galilee. So Galilee is a region in northern part of Israel. I have created here a guide where Jesus did his ministry. So what are the places? So it says here that Galilee is a region in northern Israel characterized by fertile land and significant trade routes. It's home of the Gentiles. And Jesus performed many miracles and teachings here, including the Sermon on the Mount and the feeding of the 5,000. Now let's answer the next question, when? When did it happen? So we would be able to read in the few verses earlier that this is the beginning of Jesus' ministry. This happened after Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist, and this also happened after his 40 days of fasting and after he was tempted by Satan in the wilderness. The next question is why, or what's the purpose of this passage? So this is to highlight the growing ministry of Jesus and to provide a glimpse into his mission, his methods, and his impact on people. Another purpose is for us to be introduced to Jesus' early public ministry, and of course, to show the fulfillment of a prophecy written in the Old Testament, specifically about the coming of the Messiah, the Savior, that would bring healing and light to our broken world. So I have added some reference right here from the book of Isaiah. Now, as I was reading verse 24, it says here that news about him spread all over Syria, and people brought to him all who were ill with various diseases, those suffering severe pain, the demon-possessed, those having seizures, and the paralyzed, and he healed them. As I was reading this specific verse, I was just very curious as to why is it that so many people during their time are sick? And of course, by asking this question, we have done some research right here. And I found out that one of the reasons why people are sick during their time is because of lack of modern medicine. Unlike what we have right now, we have the access to this. Back then, there are no antibiotics yet, no vaccines yet, and surgical procedures are not yet being done because of lack of modern medicine. Another reason could be poor sanitation. During their time, cities and villages lacked proper sewage systems and clean water supplies. Also, many people lived in poverty and suffered from malnutrition due to limited access to food. And another reason could be environmental and occupational hazards. For example, farmers, shepherds, and some laborers, they were exposed to harsh environmental conditions, and those led to injuries, infections, and skin diseases. Sometimes it's spiritual and cultural perspectives on illnesses. Like in Jewish culture, sickness was often perceived as a consequence of sin or divine punishment, as it is written in John chapter 9, verse 2. And as we all know, those people that are with visible illnesses like leprosy, they were being judged and condemned by people. So instead of them being cured, they were being isolated and they are not being treated. So those are the answers to our questions right there. Those are the reasons why people are suffering from sickness and illnesses during their time. Now, as I was reading verse 24, we're still on the same verse. I have also noticed, I know that you have noticed as well, that people are not just suffering from sickness during their time. They are also suffering from demon possession. So I ask this question again. Why is it that people during their time are also suffering from demon possession? So as we have done some research and read some scriptures, I found out that it is an effort by the demonic forces, by Satan, to oppose Jesus in his ministry. As we all know, Satan was challenged when Jesus arrived here on earth, from the moment that he was conceived by Mary. And of course, he was challenged when Jesus started his ministry already. One of the reasons that I love is it was prophesied in the Old Testament that the coming of the Messiah, our Savior, would confront spiritual darkness. That's why we would be able to read in some other chapters of the Bible that Jesus is healing people that are suffering from demon possession. Another reason is that the people in their neighboring Gentile regions are practicing idol worship and some other occult practices. As mentioned in verse 25, that there are other regions followed Jesus. For example, Decapolis. Decapolis mentioned in verse 25, it is known for pagan practices. So from here, we would be able to realize that in this broken world, in this broken time, Jesus' arrival was right on time. What did he do to the people suffering? He healed them. So, what are the effects of the miracles that Jesus did during the beginning of his ministry? So, in verse 25, it says there that large crowds from different places followed Jesus. But the question there is, what drew the large crowds to come to Jesus? Did they recognize Jesus as the Messiah, the miracle worker who healed those people that are suffering, or they went there because of the miracles? Okay, some sought physical healing because they needed that. Some were just curious, needing proof. But there are people who recognized the significance of his works and sought him as the Savior, as the Messiah. So let's reflect. If you are in this crowd during their time, what type of a follower are you? And if we're going to relate it to our time today, when you go to church, when you pray, when you worship the Lord, are you really there for Jesus, or are you there because of something else? Do you seek Jesus out of genuine love and devotion, longing to know him more? Or are you just there for the blessings, hoping he's gonna solve your problems? Maybe you're just unobserving, watching from sidelines without truly engaging your heart. I just want to let you know that Jesus calls us not just to come to Him, but to follow Him with our whole lives. He desires our hearts, not just our attendance. So today, let's reflect deeply. Am I here for Jesus? And here's the truth, everyone. Jesus doesn't just want your presence. He wants your heart. He gave everything for you on the cross, and now He calls you to follow Him fully. Don't just settle for watching from the crowd. Step forward. Choose Jesus, not just for what He can do, but for who He is.